So, Will, one of the things that's come up a couple times in the Guild's virtual happy hours and also in conversations with peers is this idea of the prominence of multi-format content. That things aren't just written anymore, but we have podcasts, we have video available to us too. The way that you're thinking about your podcasting, how is all this coming into play in terms of how you think about where pieces can go where and how you can save and use content in different ways?
Sure. I mean, my background is in newspaper writing, and I've been writing a newspaper column for 15 years. And by shifting over to podcasting, I realized that, I was going where it was kind of safe in the sense that what the listener was listening to was an edited version of my interviews. And so it's kind of a behind the scenes look. If I write a column, it's going to be just a fraction of all the great conversation that I've had. And so here's a chance for me to say, um, you get in on the full conversation. And as I've gone on throughout the year, I've found ways to edit it so that it's not just one sprawling conversation. It's a little tighter. And so I actually, was several interviews, several um, episodes deep before I even had the realization. I have this once every other week column, and I have this once a week podcast. Why not use some of the material in the podcast and translate it over to writing? And so I put a little note at the end of each column saying, hey, if you'd like to hear, more from this subject, go to my podcast. I don't know if there's much of a crossover audience for that, but it'd be great to think that there is.
Yeah, so just to maybe give a little breakdown of sorts too. So when we write a written story, the quotes that we pull from people are specifically kind of, the best ways to provide the context and detail that we're trying to provide as writers. Why is it, from your perspective, that it's beneficial to offer the entirety of that conversation for people to listen to?
It takes away my needing to be the one steering the ship, because my approach to any column is it's got to have an angle. It's got to be sharp, and it's got to be, something that's going to grab you from the beginning. And I'm going to take you on this arc, and then we're going to finish. I'm going to say something clever, and we're done. But that is only one bit of the story a lot of times. And the part that to me might be a castaway uh, question that might veer off into another topic might be someone's favorite part of an interview that would have been on the cutting room floor otherwise. And that I would have said, you know what, it doesn't feed into my view of what this angle should be. So it takes me and my voice out of it a little bit. I am steering the conversation with my questions. I am steering the conversation with my edits later, but it's really more about the subject, more about the guest.
Yeah, there's also a very real difference in dealing with the space allotted in a newspaper, which has a strict word count or space, versus kind of the endless amount of time you could potentially have with a podcast, a conversation. Which raises the question, just I guess logistically, when you are thinking about how to save things for one or the other, or just trying to think about what is best to go into written format versus how you want to present something in that full conversation, what is the, I guess, kind of the process you think about, you go through?
Well, I think about my audience, and my audience for the newspaper, which is a Connecticut newspaper called the Waterbury Republican American, is really, I try to keep that local to Connecticut and local to the Northeast. If I'm going to talk about a brewery, I want it to be a brewery that they can go to or get the beer from. Whereas with the podcast, I like to think I'm going worldwide here. I have spoken to podcasters and writers from other countries. I'm up to 13 states that I've spoken to people from. And so that doesn't always translate into what my column readers might appreciate. That said, I did get a chance, for example, to talk to um, Nathaniel Chapman, who wrote a book called Beer and Racism. And I thought that was something I wanted my local readers to read about. It was a voice that they would probably not hear, because a lot of the people who read my column are not there for the beer, they're there for the sports, or they're there for the local news. And so I like to think that not only am I bringing them something from the outside world, I'm also bringing them something that's, more targeted to them. So that's kind of my thought process is, the podcast is worldwide, and the column is a little bit more for my local reader.
In trying to think about these things in an active way, what would you say has been maybe one of the most important takeaways that you feel like would benefit other people?
I think that you cannot underestimate the role of preparation and editing, the two parts that seem really behind the scenes. And I've done some really fun podcasts where I really didn't do a lot of preparation because I knew the person so well. But I realized that my preparation came in the years of knowing and following that brewery. And so it might seem very laid back. And here I'm actually drinking beer and talking to this person. Oh my gosh, shouldn't he be more focused? Well, that's the preparation came before. And then the editing side is also really important. I'm finding that quality of audio is one of the things that is going to turn off a listener right away, and myself included. I really do not like listening to people drink and describe beer while they're doing a podcast, which is just, for me. And I realize that, I'm so attuned to like little mouth things and sounds that that's been one of the great pleasures of this too. It's not it's not as vibrant and as exciting as being in the middle of the interview, but it is important.